Good morning. Welcome to the Humanistic Service Provision debate. A little description on our topic. Behavior analysts are frequently expected to work with a broad range of clients who may be faced with clients who request that they engage in behavior considered unethical based on strict adherence to the code, such as offering gifts, receiving gifts, and causing a multiple relationship. My name is Jay, and welcome to the debate.
My name is Elizabeth, and I will be debating on the pro side of gift giving.
My name is Isabel, and I will also be debating on the pro side of gift giving.
My name's Mackenzie, and I will be debating on the con side.
And my name is Whitney, and I will also be debating on the con side.
For the pro side states that refusing gifts can lead to conflict and unethical situations.
And on the con side, it states that gift giving can lead to unethical and multiple relationships.
Yeah, so on the pro side will be arguing in favor of gift giving for 3 reasons that we're going to discuss. It decreases the chances of offending someone's culture where refusing gifts could be disrespectful. It promotes the cultural competence of like all different cultures that we come across while we're working with families. And then also that denying gifts could also lead to damaging the relationship and the rapport or trust between the provider and the client.
And the con side, we'll be arguing against gift giving for 3 reasons as well: that boundary lines can be crossed and more than one ethical violation could occur, as well as that it can lead to multiple relationships, and it can lead to services that benefit the client being discontinued.
So I'm going to begin with some research and rationale on the pro side, and discuss our viewpoint of why gift giving is sometimes in conflict with certain ethical codes, and where we have to be cautious about refusing gifts. In the current BACB ethics code, there are often codes that overlap with each other or in conflict in a lot of situations. And that's to say that it's often impossible to follow all the codes at once. And certain codes just directly conflict with each other in certain situations. So looking at this with like a cultural lens, refusing gifts can often lead to damaging the rapport that's been built in the professional relationship between the client and a behavior analyst. So for instance, in certain cultures, not accepting a cup of tea or a food item from a family while in their house could be considered very rude, and would damage the rapport. And this was found in a research article by Rosenberg and Schwartz, 2019. And so this could directly lead to the behavior analyst directly violating code 2.0 of the ethics code that holds behavior analysts accountable for acting in the client's best interest. It could very well be that not accepting certain gifts could lead to indirectly violation of a code, such as 2.15a, which states that behavior analysts act in the best interest of clients and their supervisee to avoid interruption or disruption of services. So for instance, if a family feels that their culture or values are disrespected, this could lead a family to request a new supervisor or simply request to discontinue services altogether or abruptly, which is certainly not in the best interest of clients in most situations. And so in terms of the new ethics code that's going to be happening in 2022, attempts that have been made to make revisions to this have been shown in code 1.12, giving and receiving gifts. And the revision of this code is that behavior analysts can accept gifts that have a monetary value of $10 or less. And we believe that this could be a good step in resolving these potential conflicts that can arise when attempting to not engage in a multiple relationship, but also not offending the family's culture and traditions and damaging the rapport.
Furthermore, I'm going to discuss how a lack of social competence can affect why gift giving or denying gifts can hurt a child with autism or ruin the rapport with the family. So ethics codes have been created by the BACB to ensure that there's a healthy, safe, and professional environment for practitioners and clients. Some of these ethics codes can at times appear to be controversial, including gift giving. In January of 2022, you'll see that they've put that $10 cap, so any gift given can be $10 or less. However, if you think about it, if a client wanted to gift an entire clinic for something, there's probably going to be more than $10 invested in that. And if it was, per se, the child's idea to give pizza to the whole clinic for a day and it's denied, imagine how that might feel to that child if their gift is turned away. While the idea of multiple relationships is a threat of giving and accepting gifts, there's also a great degree of professionalism in the gift-giving process. Gift-giving is a social behavior that often strengthens the current relationship between two individuals rather than creating a new or inappropriate one. One may give a gift to show gratitude for hard work, to praise someone on a new accomplishment, or thank them for their help and their support. And it's overall use as a form of positive reinforcement. It would be difficult to maintain that monetary maximum, as I stated before. In Bianco and Moore in 2010, they stated that for a child to feel safe enough to freely communicate his or her needs, the child may feel it's necessary to present a gift to the therapist. The child's expression of self may be inhibited if the therapist chooses to refuse the gift. Other research suggested that it is developmentally appropriate for a child to offer items unselfishly, and that it may adversely affect the growth of the child if the gift is given in a genuine way and is subsequently refused. Now, this article is in discussion of neurotypical children, so let's consider this effect on children diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder. Many studies have shown that children with ASD show lack of skills using social and communication skills. A client's family may give a gift to show appreciation for their therapist or behavior analyst. Likewise, a client might choose to pick out a gift for their therapist or behavior analyst. These students present a lack of ability to understand the meaning of other people's behaviors, according to research. In the same way, research also explains that these children admit fewer skills focused on understanding literal language and ability to replicate, imagine, and participate in different social situations. With that being said, imagine the emotional impact it may have on a child if their gift is denied.
For some more research and rationale on the pro side of gift giving and multiple relationships, one of the most talked about elements of the BACB code 1.06D is, as we know, whether behavior analysts should or should not accept gifts, as the code states that accepting gifts from clients would establish a multiple relationship. And as we know, multiple relationships are not acceptable due to the harmful effects it leaves between the BCBA and the client. Although there's no research specifically on how receiving and giving gifts affects a client's treatment, there's actually been a survey completed on this exact topic. In the 2020 edition of Behavior Analysis, Research and Practice, a research article described that a total of 57 behavior analysts were surveyed, and it was reported that 40% had accepted gifts of a minor value, 12% accepted gifts of a moderate value, and 77 stated that their clients would be offended if they refused to accept the gift. Now that brings up the point, being offended for not accepting a gift brings up the importance of becoming more sensitive to different cultural aspects. An article in a 2002 edition of Behavioral and Social Issues stated that cultural competence is actually a two-way street, where all cultural aspects are to be respected, and it would help promote an optimal treatment. It is important that clients shouldn't have to only follow our rules. We should be doing the same based on their rules according to their culture. It should be important to evaluate the effects of refusing all gifts during a therapeutic relationship, which involves individuals whose culture states refusing a gift is disrespectful. If behavioral analysis wants to be more culturally sensitive, then being able to modify the guidelines to reflect cultural aspects should be allowed to provide effective treatment. The current BACB code does not focus on ethical viewpoints of cultures. Code 1.05 is the only place where culture is mentioned, and the code briefly summarizes that behavior analysts must resolve differences in culture that may affect the services being provided. Culture is far more essential and complicated than what was intended with the present edition of the codes and what was written and how it is interpreted. Next up is the con side with the research and rationale.
All right, so I'm going to start off for the con side, explaining boundary crossings and boundary violations and how gift giving with those two aspects can be detrimental and create a multiple relationship. So when it comes to gift giving, it can either stem from a multiple relationship or it can be what starts one. According to some research, multiple relationships can stem from boundary crossings or boundary violations, and those can occur in any type of relationship, whether it's supervisor or to supervisee, therapist to client, or supervisor to client. A boundary crossing is the departure from the strictest professional role. So for example, if you have a family that has offered for the therapist to stay for dinner, that's crossing a boundary. A therapist that babysits a client outside of therapy sessions, that's crossing a boundary. Same with a supervisor having a supervisee accompany them to the mall, that's crossing a boundary. The boundary crossings can be the bridge to engaging in multiple relationships. Also, boundary violations are reoccurring actions that can encroach on physical and psychological boundaries that satisfy personal needs. So, for example, if a BCBA has a therapist sign off on a paper every month saying a certain protocol was ran, but it really wasn't, that's a boundary violation of both the supervisor and supervisees. Boundary violations are where both sides are at fault. So back to the example, the therapist, for them to sign off every single month, they're violating the boundary, as well as the supervisor asking them to is violating the boundary. So boundary crossings are usually one-sided. But with gift giving, boundary violations occur way more than boundary crossings. Supervisors, they can give gifts to therapists on the side and get the therapist to do things for them. And it can be physical things or something as simple as forging documents. But with gift giving, it can also lead to other violations in regards to other ethics codes outside of the main no gift giving and no multiple relationship ethics codes. So gift giving can also lead to confusion between parties. In the situation of a therapist to client, a gift from either party to the other can blur the lines and lead to an ethical violation. It can turn the professional relationship into a multiple relationship or even into an exploitative relationship. From the current ethics codes, gift giving can lead to or involve violating codes such as Code 1.04 on integrity, Code 1.06 on multiple relationships, Code 7.01 on promoting an ethical culture, and so much more. And with the new codes coming in 2022, gift giving can lead to also violating Code 1.01 on being truthful, 1.14 on romantic and sexual relationships, 3.11 on documenting professional activity, and way more there too.
Now I'm going to go over some more information to show why gift giving and multiple relationships can be detrimental to a client. And behavior analysts avoid multiple relationships because multiple relationships can result in a conflict of interest, which then in turn can cause harm to a client. So, and also multiple relationships are a violation of Ethical Code 1.06. And these multiple relationships can form as a result of giving gifts. And that is why behavior analysts do not accept gifts, which is also stated in the Ethics Code of 1.06 under Section B. And there has been some discussion of allowing behavior analysts to receive some gifts, although they put a limit in place for that amount, because gift giving can lead to the slippery slope of ethical violations, which in turn then can cause harm to the client. So that new code that's going to be set in place is code 1.12, giving and receiving gifts, which states behavior analysts will not accept gifts that are in excess of $10. And at the start of services, behavior analysts make clients aware of the requirements, they set clear expectations, and they set boundaries. And failure to comply with these requirements can result in services being discontinued. And it is the responsibility of the behavior analyst to make sure the client understands this. And although we don't want to discontinue services, discontinuation of services is a last resort. However, services can be warranted to be discontinued, and this is also stated in Code 2.15D under number 3, when a client is being harmed by continuation of services. And then that harm is done when multiple relationships are started. So in order to prevent multiple relationships and gift giving, boundaries must be put in place. And boundaries are thought to promote effective treatment because they protect the client's welfare. So we need to establish these clear boundaries and roles for the therapist and define the therapist-client relationship. And the boundaries are to ensure the therapist is acting in the client's best interest and not their own. And if a situation were to arise that could result in a boundary violation, the therapist needs to resolve that situation quickly. And they can do that by reaching out to a supervisor if they need more help. An example would be if a client is giving a gift card for $100 because they're grateful for all their work. The therapist needs to say thank you to the client for their gesture and how much they appreciate it. They need to decline that gift because accepting the gift card would be an ethical violation. And some reasons why they would want to decline the gift if the gift card were to be accepted: this could lead to the boundary violation because perhaps the client was giving the gift card maybe as a bribe to the therapist or to ask for a favor down the road. Also, if the gift were expected, maybe the client had romantic feelings about this therapist, and that could give them the wrong impression and continue to lead to multiple relationships, which in turn then would harm that client. So because we're not able to know the true intentions of when clients are giving gifts, it's important just to follow the ethical codes, keep the boundaries in place by declining gifts and not engaging in multiple relationships. And now we'll hear some personal stories from the pro side.
Thanks, Mackenzie. The next section we're going to go into is sharing personal stories from our professional settings on the pro side and the con side that will further illustrate our reasons and defend both sides on why we are in favor or against gift giving. And I'm going to start with my personal story, which is, so I was once working with a client, and I was providing in-home services, and it was my birthday, and it was actually my birthday was in a week, and I was going out of town, and the mother bought me a birthday gift that was a dessert item that they had actually brought back from their home country where they had just visited. That was a traditional cake that they ate in their culture. And she gave it to me as a birthday gift. I decided I had to decline it respectfully, and I explained the ethics codes of 1.06 and 1.07 not to, engage in multiple relationships by accepting the gift. The outcome of this was that the mother did look visibly upset by this, and attempted to further ask if I could just eat the cake in the home and not take it with me. And I didn't take it with me, and I just further explained that, I couldn't accept it, but that I very much appreciated it. And I did end up saying that I would be happy to take a break during session to sit together with them so that they could have the cake and I could enjoy it with them. The mother accepted this answer, and didn't continue to press the issue. However, during the time that we were eating cake, it definitely created an uncomfortable situation for us, and it appeared to damage the rapport to a degree, as the client also looked visibly upset that I couldn't eat the cake with them that they had brought back specifically for me. I think not, accepting this, the client, it definitely damaged some rapport between the two of us. And then the ethics codes that were violated in this situation, or like that were applicable, would be in the current ethics codes that we have, would be the 1.06 and 1.07. And in the new ethics codes, this would be 1.11 and 1.12. And I think during the situation, what I think I did well in this situation was, just my attempt to, in the second response, to explain to the mother that I could sit with them and enjoy the cake while they ate the cake, I think was an okay trying to compromise in the situation. And, even though it did lead to some possible break in rapport, I think, it was an okay attempt to meet them halfway. And then what I think could have been done differently in this situation, I believe that with the current codes that we have in place, I don't think that there was anything I could have done differently, as the cake I saw from the price tag was a little more expensive than I felt comfortable accepting. So I don't think I could have done anything differently with the codes we have in place. However, with the new codes that are upcoming, maybe this could have been something that I could have accepted and it wouldn't have damaged the rapport and the relationship. But in this instance, it could have been the more ethical choice to not damage the rapport and the relationship. But I thought that, just not accepting it would have been the better thing to do, just to avoid any kind of slippery slope in terms of the multiple relationships.
Thanks for your story, Isabel. So I'm going to go on to talk about one of my personal experiences that I had. In my role, I'm considered a senior therapist. So when my BCBA is not present, a lot of my RBTs come directly to me for help, support, questions. Excuse me. And on this day, I had a client who was graduating from our center, and it was her very last day. Her grandparents had brought in 2 large gift bags full of goodie bags. And due to COVID regulations, we're currently getting clients from their vehicles to bring them into the clinic. So the RBT had gone outside to get the client, and upon doing so, received the gifts from the grandparents of the client. So I was not present for it. I did not see it occur. Although that falls back on the RBT for accepting it, I did see the gifts sitting in the client's room later on in the day. And I thought to myself, what are we going to do about this? We've already accepted them from the family. So I went and consulted with another BCBA that was in the building, not the one that works directly with the client. And she took it upon herself to go to the classroom, receive the gifts, and take them into the office. We could not tell what was inside of the bags without opening them. So we didn't know if there was monetary value. We didn't know if they were handcrafted and could have been accepted. There was just no telling without opening them. So when my BCBA did return to the center the following day, she went ahead and opened them, went through them to see what was in there. Turns out that there were enough, probably about 50 scratch-off lottery tickets in each bag, or one in each bag, for all of the therapists that work in our center, all the professionals, to be able to have one. But then there were also handcrafted notes from the client herself and painted little wooden puzzle pieces that could have been accepted. So it was kind of a mixture of, we can have this, but we can't have this. And what my BCBA ended up doing was splitting everything up, taking out the crafts and the notes and leaving them on the desk for us professionals to take one if we wanted one as a momentum. But then she returned the lottery tickets to the family. She never followed up with me about how that return went or how that exchange went. And I failed to even consider asking her. However, she did tell me that what I did that day without her present was appropriate, that there's nothing else I could have done in my role, and that what her fellow practitioner BCBA chose to do by going and removing the bags from the rooms was appropriate. So moving forward, I know that I made the right choice in speaking out and saying something before the gifts got handed out. And although I don't know the outcome of the grandparents receiving the lottery tickets back, I could only imagine how that could ruin the rapport with the family. Like, you've taken this gift from me and now you're receiving it, or returning it, pardon me. Now you're returning it. That would ruin a rapport right there, because you're showing a little bit of ungratefulness for something that they went out and did for you. But there's no telling. Like I said, I don't know the end result in the story. On this whole story, the current ethics codes that were violated were 1.06, 1.07, and in the future for 2022 codes, it will be 1.11 and 1.12. However, with the $10 max, it's still really difficult to know if lottery tickets should even be accepted, because you don't know the value in those. So in the future, that still would not necessarily be an acceptable gift to give or receive, unfortunately. But maybe one day we will see further change in the gift giving and receiving as they continue to make these evolvements in codes. Jay, do you have a story for us?
Yes. So my personal story is from a couple of years ago. I work with a child whose family personally owned a sweet shop. And it was the day before Christmas, and I was completing session notes during the last 15 minutes of the session. The child's father walked into the living room with a small box, and it had a little bow wrapped around it and everything. The father went on to explain that the family wanted to give me some sweets to enjoy during Christmas because of everything I'd done for the child, and they wanted to thank me with this gesture. I actually had to refuse the gifts, and the look on the father's face changed dramatically. Right away, I felt like a huge jerk at that point for telling the father I could not accept the sweets, and I explained why I couldn't accept them due to ethical codes I have to follow. What made the situation even worse was that he told me he personally made them himself. The father then stated that in his culture, refusing food was a sign of disrespect, and I shouldn't refuse it since it wasn't even that expensive or over the top of a gift. I explained that I would need to talk to my supervisor before accepting anything, and I apologized that I hope I didn't offend him. The father remained quiet, signed off on the session note, and I simply left the session. Right after the session, I contacted my supervisor and explained what happened. He told me I did everything right by refusing it and explaining my side. My supervisor also stated that the ethical codes will actually always compete with one another, and maybe by rejecting the food, we would also violate a code 2.0, which states that as behavior analysts have a responsibility to operate in the best interest of the client. So the black and white answer might be that sweets are a gift, so it shouldn't be accepted. But also, if you really think that rejecting the sweets is going to negatively influence the professional relationship with you and the family, then accepting might be worth considering. With my personal story, the current codes that were violated were or involved were 1.06D, 1.05C, and 2.0. With the new codes that are coming out, that would be 1.12, 1.07, and 3.01. And with the new codes coming out, I feel like the gift would have been okay to accept since it's less than $10 of the value stated in the code that will be coming out in 2022. What went well with the situation was that after the incident did take place, during our next session, my supervisor came out and we sat down with the father and we went through the ethical codes and we explained to him why I had to refuse the gift. And we actually explained that the new code's coming up and what changes were going to be made. Yeah, so now let's hear some personal stories from the contact.
All right, so I'm going to start with my story. So I was working with this family and they were super awesome. Their son, he was great. He was on the higher functioning side of autism. So no type of maladaptive behaviors or anything negative occurred. But while I was working with the family, I ended up getting pregnant and I had like this huge belly. And the family, because they had seen me every day, they bought me this baby bag and it was pink and gray. It was like the brand Jeep, which me and my family are like obsessed with. We all drive Jeeps. We love Jeeps, all that kind of stuff. And they tried to give it to me towards the end of the session that I had that day. And I had to decline the baby bag because of the ethics codes that we have in place right now. And when I declined it, the family tried to go to my supervisor and give them the bag to give to me. And they had to decline it as well. My supervisor, she was able to explain the current ethics codes because at the time I knew the ethics codes, but I was a new RBT, so I didn't feel comfortable sitting down with the family to actually explain to them in detail why I couldn't accept it. So I made sure to let my supervisor know what was going on so that she could set up a meeting with them. And I was present for the meeting, so it was a learning experience for me too. But the outcome of my story was that the family actually took me declining the gift personally because I had built a really good rapport with the client. I had really good instructional control over the kid, and he was really, really excited to see me all the time, and we had great sessions and everything. So on a separate day, the family's babysitter that was with the client tried to give me the baby bag again. But before she tried to give me the baby bag, she asked me some questions about personal information regarding the company I was working for at the time because they were looking for other options and they were soon going to leave our company and we're looking for services with another one. And I was a little bit uncomfortable at that point, way more uncomfortable than I was declining the gift because we had a really good rapport. I didn't think that I would ever be asked a question like that or, legally asked anything of the sort. So I told my supervisor about what occurred and I ended up being taken off the case because I was very, very uncomfortable and it turned into them kind of pressuring me to take the bag so much that it was taken away from the time I was supposed to be spending helping the client. So it wasn't really benefiting the client that I was there anymore because most of the time was like, tell me what you know about this, and then you can have this bag. So later on, I actually found out that the client was discharged from services because they were not able to uphold the codes with multiple therapists. The family had a therapist after me and they tried to do the same thing, but with a different gift. So it ended up with the family being discharged, which is unfortunate for the client because I do think he was benefiting from services before that point, but because the relationship took a horrible turn regarding gift giving, he had to be the one to get the short end of the stick and get his services discontinued with us. So the ethics codes that were violated and or applicable for the current codes, it was 1.06 and 1.07. And for the new codes coming in 2022, it would be 1.11, 1.12, and 3.15. I think that in my situation, what I did well was that I declined the gift and I was able to quickly loop in my supervisor when the family got even more aggressive about me taking the gift. And I also think it was good that my supervisor sat down with the family and explained to them why no one could accept gifts. Like, it wasn't just, me on my own not accepting the gifts. It was just, a profession as a whole that we couldn't. And I think what possibly could have been done differently is that the supervisor could have sat down with the family ahead of starting services to explain the codes to them, because I'm not really sure if they were informed on it before, like if they knew they couldn't give me a gift and still decided to, or if they really didn't know that we weren't allowed to take them. I also think that because I was a new RBT, it would have been beneficial if the supervisor had discussed or even role played with me certain ethical situations, so I knew how to react and when to get the supervisor involved, just in case the supervisors would have needed to be involved earlier than they were in the situation. But like I said, because of the gift giving and the pressure of the gift giving, it ended up resulting in the client losing services, and that's harmful to the client. So now Mackenzie is going to go into her story.
While I was in college, I was part of a program that offered support to high school students who planned to attend the university that had autism. And the goal of this program was to provide students with mentors who could accompany them to social events that were held on campus and help them become familiar with the environment and make friends, so they could lessen some of that anxiety that they had when they would be attending the university. And some of the events that we would take them to would include magic shows, movie nights, we had carnival day, cookouts, and games, and anything you could think of that they would host on campus. And as the mentor, I would specifically meet the mentee at the Welcome Center, and then we could accompany them to campus-sponsored events. And at the campus events, that's when I would help them meet new friends, show them how to engage in conversations, show them what campus life was all about, but in a safe manner. And then once the event was over, then I would take them back to the center where they would meet their parents so they could go home. And it was my job as the mentor to avoid multiple relationships that could occur, especially being on campus with a student who's getting ready to enter into college. Sometimes they feel like they're already an adult, or they have liberty to some freedoms that would not be appropriate. And there were many occasions in which multiple relationships could have formed if I was not careful. And there was a situation where one of the mentees invited me to go with her to a high school party after a football game. And her parents were very protective of her. And they said that she could only go if I were to go with her and keep an eye out for her. And I had to politely decline, because going to a high school party would constitute as a multiple relationship and a whole bunch of other legal issues if things did not go as planned. So I just explained to her that I could not attend any events that were off campus and not sponsored by the university. And per our university policy, while the mentees are enrolled in the program, we can't accompany them to any off-campus events, especially because they were all minors. And we needed to ensure the atmosphere was free of drugs and alcohol, and overall their well-being and safety was taken into place. And by declining this, the mentee was originally very upset with me that I would not go with her, and that because I wouldn't go with her, she wouldn't be able to go. She even tried to give me a t-shirt so she said I could fit in and no one would have to know, but I just had to explain to her that this would be an ethical violation of accepting a gift and forming multiple relationships. So it's just not something that could happen. I ended up having to talk to her parents to explain to them why I could not go. And they did understand. And they also explained to their daughter why I could not go. So she ended up understanding. Although she was upset, she felt like I didn't like her gifts or the t-shirt wasn't good enough. And I had to explain to her that I appreciate spending time with her on campus and that I was very grateful for the gift. Just unfortunately, due to the ethics codes, I could not accept it. And by the end, she seemed satisfied with the answer and asked about the next campus event that we were going to. So some of the current codes that would be applicable would be 1.06 and 1.07. And then the new codes that would apply would be 1.11 and 1.12. And with the situation, I felt that I handled the situation well and responded appropriately. I was able to follow the policy of the university, and I also didn't violate any of the ethics codes. And I was also able to maintain a relationship with the mentee, and I didn't damage that relationship. She was able to move on. For things I could have done differently, I could have gotten the program coordinator involved to speak with the family and the mentee, but I didn't feel that was necessary. After talking with both her and her parents, they were able to move on. So I felt like the resolution went well.
All right, thanks. So we're going to move on and we're going to wrap up this debate. So as you can see, I support, or our team, the three of us support gift giving because the refusal of gift giving may lead to conflict situations due to cultural aspects. Culture is far more important and essential and complicated than what was intended when the present edition of the BACB code was written and how it's interpreted. Accepting gifts will also minimize the risk of violating other ethical codes. Furthermore, refusing the gifts can also damage the current relationship a client and therapist have due to lack of social competence in a client with autism spectrum disorders, as well as the rapport a clinician or practitioner may have with the family. Lastly, utilizing gifts as reinforcement to strengthen a current relationship is extremely beneficial in a therapeutic relationship.
And then for the con side, overall, gift giving can lead to a toxic, unhealthy professional relationship between coworkers, supervisors, supervisees, and clinicians and clients. Gifts of any kind should not be accepted due to the fact that sessions can turn into more of a relaxed environment if the client's programming is not hefty, and it's important to maintain professional boundaries in every way. Therefore, we are against gift giving and forming multiple relationships.
Alrighty, so that concludes our debate. Hope you guys enjoyed our debate. Thank you for watching, and hope everyone has a good day. Thank you.